want to invite the person that after Malik kept mentioning Abdul Rahman from just now. So he's here. He is actually a good friend of mine. Abdul Rahman Malik, he's married to a Singaporean, alhamdulillah. For that alone, he's going to Jannah. And his name is Abdul Rahman Malik. He's a Canadian, and he's also a London-based journalist, and he talks a lot on BBC, so you can catch him on BBC as well. So I'll just give him the mic for him to say a few words. Sure.
After the discourse of Ustaz Aftab, we probably don't need much more. But Jazakallah khair. Listening to Sidi Aftab, who's been a friend, going back to the 90s, the old days. It's really gratifying to hear the things that I think all of us over the years have learned from our teachers be so beautifully put together in a way that is digestible and understandable, but also for us, it's been put to us in a way that we can take it away and deliver it within our own families, to our elders, to our youngsters, because the issues that Sidi Aftab raised and that we've been discussing tonight about this very important celebration is something that gets raised in our living rooms and in our families all the time. Is it right? Is it wrong? How should we approach it? And yet, we know that the textual evidence, the evidence from the past and the tradition, and of course the living proof of this celebration is in the attending of it, is in this gathering. And one of the things that's always very Mubarak about coming back to my Singaporean family and for us to come and visit is that the great joy there is in this place, and with the brothers who sing and the sisters and brothers who come together in remembering the Prophet ﷺ and making him living in our hearts and in our communities. Because his aliveness, his livingness, for us, we're in no doubt about it. We are no doubt about the veracity and the reality of the state of the Rasul ﷺ now, this moment. And that when in the ahadith, the Rasul ﷺ testified before his passing, that after his passing, our deeds would be made, that he would be made witness to our deeds, both the good of them and the bad of them, and that he would pray for the acceptance of the good and the forgiveness of the bad. It was a promise he made before he left the earthly realm, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But recently, my wife and I had a very interesting conversation with a friend, and I just want to share this experience with you. And I hope in a way it helps me understand why tonight's discussion is so important. We recently had a friend come and visit us who had a very difficult, I would say traumatic experience with other Muslims. And she went for advice and she sought the companionship of a spiritual community. And unfortunately, that spiritual community let her down. And let her down in a very profound way, in a very intimate way. And she was really devastated by what she received because she was expecting something else. And when she returned from that experience, and she was traumatized, and she was hurt, she found in her company of friends, she found herself moving away from other Muslims. She found them judgmental. She found them difficult. She found them obsessed with the law, as Sidi Haftal was pointing out. We live in a time when some people are obsessed with the law to the extreme. And instead she found companionship and friendship, which in a way is good and proper because we have friends from many different traditions. She found good friendship with friends coming from the Christian tradition. And I could empathize with her because over the last 10 years I've worked very closely with Christian communities in the United Kingdom. Many of my very good friends are Christians, and I've learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot from them about community. I've learned a lot from them about love. I've learned a lot from them about listening. I've learned a lot from them about service. And we can look, and obviously we learn from people from other traditions, and this is wisdom that we take, and then we take into our own tradition, and it strengthens us. And I found nothing in my interaction with my Christian friends other than my faith has been strengthened through that. Because every goodness that they have shown, I found a reflection of that in my own tradition. But she said to us that she found great solace with her Christian friends because they spoke about love, and they spoke about acceptance, and they spoke about community. And in a way, I thought to myself, this is actually a dilemma. It's a dilemma that sometimes my Christian friends point out to me. And it's a dilemma that I hear more and more from other Muslims. And the dilemma is this. When they see the way Isa alayhi salam is presented within, say, the Christian tradition, accessible, godly, merciful, loving, they feel like, where do I find that within Islam? Because I don't see it. Sometimes we make Allah so distant. Because of course, laysa kamithlihi shay, there's nothing like Him. But we make Allah so distant, so far, so removed, that we begin to have a difficulty having this relationship with God. And sometimes my Christian friends will say to me, they'll say, Abdul Rehman, we really appreciate Islam, but we really have a lot of difficulty with the Islamic conception of God. Because you have this idea that the oneness of God to the maximum logical possibility of oneness, what Abdul Hakim Murad calls radical monotheism. He says, we can't understand that God. We have difficulty understanding that God. Of course, we have a conversation about it. But then it occurred to me, and I started thinking about this line from the Burda. The brothers will know the line. It's from the last fasal, isn't it? Where Imam Busayri talks about those who praise Isa alayhi salam. What's the verse? Let those who praise Isa praise him. Have their praise. There's a line in the Burda which refers to Isa alayhi salam and compares the rank of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the rank of the prophets that came before. And I started thinking about this because this is, and I follow me on the journey for a second. When we look at the life of Isa alayhi salam, it is no doubt extraordinary, isn't it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him birth, virgin birth. So gave him life without a father. Placed him, and it says his ruh, breathed his ruh into Sayyidah Maryam. May Allah be pleased with her. That he's born and he speaks. In defense of whom? Not himself, his mother. He grows up and he performs amazing miracles. Does he have 100,000 companions? He has a handful of disciples. And yet those handful of disciples change the world. The life of Isa alayhi salam is remarkable. He is supposed to be crucified, but Allah takes him. And he dwells with his Lord until such time as Allah's will comes. Isa alayhi salam is amazing, is remarkable, is in his life an example of purity, piety, love, and guidance. So, I started thinking, it's true. Isa alayhi salam has got a lot going for him. Our Christian friends have a point. Even if we don't accept the divinity of Jesus, we have to say, there's something serious going on here. He's still with his Lord. But then I thought about this line from the Burda. And I started thinking about the rank of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I thought to myself, if Isa alayhi salam's life is so magnificent, then why is the Prophet ﷺ the perfect human being? And the answer in some ways is simple, but for me at least was profound. The Prophet ﷺ is the perfect human being. Because although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Isa alayhi salam so many gifts, what did he give to the Rasul? He gave to the Rasul the entire breadth, the entire possibility of human existence. The Prophet ﷺ has a mother and a father. The Prophet ﷺ comes into this world an orphan. The Prophet ﷺ has a childhood. The Prophet ﷺ has a cleansing experience in that childhood. The Prophet ﷺ learns pain. The Prophet ﷺ experiences sadness. The Prophet ﷺ experiences distress. The Prophet ﷺ experiences revelation. The Prophet ﷺ experiences nubuwah. The Prophet ﷺ experiences risala. The Prophet ﷺ marries. The Prophet ﷺ is intimate. The Prophet ﷺ loves. The Prophet ﷺ has children. The Prophet ﷺ buries his children. The Prophet ﷺ buries his grandchildren. The Prophet ﷺ buries his elders. The Prophet ﷺ raises the sword. The Prophet ﷺ lays down his sword and makes peace. The Prophet ﷺ rules a community as a leader would, yet the Prophet ﷺ sews his own clothes. The Prophet ﷺ cleans his own house. The Prophet ﷺ gives rulings on every manner of speaking. And the greatest passage that we must all go through, the Prophet ﷺ experiences death. And it is said in the narration that he experiences a painful death. So what makes our Rasul ﷺ perfect is that in his life we see every aspect of humanity perfected. Every bit of what you and I will experience, and some of us, God forbid, I hope we never experience some of those things. I hope we never have to bury a child. I hope we never have to preside over a loved one who's been murdered like Sayyidina Hamza was. But the Rasul ﷺ in his life, in those incredible 63 years, experiences every aspect of humanity, and in experiencing that humanity gives us the perfect example of what to do at every moment. That is why Imam Busayri, and that is why in our tradition we say confidently and not with ego or exaggeration that the gift that we have been given, Al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is the perfect human being, is perfection personified. He is the greatest, the leader, the Sayyid al-Anbiya. That is the gift. So when Sidi Aftab, and especially in these beautiful last words he gave us, encourages us to Mawlid, what is the encouragement? Connect yourself to human perfection so that we can strive towards that perfection. And why? And this is what I tell my Christian friends. I say, I understand why you love Jesus. I love him too. But in the Prophet, I don't have a perfect Messiah, which the Isa alayhi salam was. He's Masih, he's Christ. We have no problem in saying that. In Isa alayhi salam, you have the perfection of the Messiah, the one who came to give the momentous message that humanity was now turning, balancing between law and the heart again. But in the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have something even greater. You have the perfect human being. And that's why Shaitan cried, didn't he? Because he cried at the first time because Adam alayhi salam was made more perfect than the jinn. And he cried when the trajectory of Adam alayhi salam reaches its perfection. That's the gift. That's the gift. So in every community, in Singapore, in Toronto, in London, we are doing ourselves a disservice. We are doing ourselves a disservice The Prophet ﷺ is not diminished. God is not diminished. The tradition is not diminished. Islam is not diminished. We are diminished if we don't do this Mawlid. We are diminished. This Mawlid is a school. When we do the Mawlid every week, this is learning. This is the academy. This is the training. You come to the Mawlid every week, I come to the Mawlid every week. We learn. We hear about human perfection. We understand the way you deal with real world issues, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ is dealing with. And then what do? We go out into our families, into our businesses, into our communities, into our homes, into the world, and what do? We live the prophetic example. We try to heal, we try to serve, we try to give, we try to help, we try to put hearts back together, not break them apart. We try to be sources of peace for people, not sources of agony for people. This is the training ground. And there was a time when this training ground was everywhere. Now we have to work hard. We have to work hard. But that's why what you're doing here every week is such a blessing. And I've traveled all over the world as Sidi Aftab has. Many of you have. And I know that this is special. What we have here in Singapore, this is very, very special. This is an honored place. So honor this place. But we should honor it by learning, training, opening up the hearts, and going out there and being soldiers in the army of mercy. Soldiers in the army of mercy. Because that's what the Rasul ﷺ came with. Not with a sword, not with terror, not with hatred, not with fear. Even those who were fearful entered his presence and their fear went away. He came with love, mercy, and compassion. That is why tonight's talk is so important. That is why these gatherings are important. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless Sidi Nasser and the brothers of the Naqshbandi Nazmiya ensemble. May Allah bless them and bless their mashayikh. May Allah bless each and every one of you who make this community beautiful. May Allah bless your parents and your elders and our elders who gave us the knowledge and who gave us the inspiration and who gave us the teaching that we would be here today. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this gathering may the light of Allah and His Messenger flow through us in this gathering. And that may we find ourselves those who, through these gatherings, become better human beings outside of these doors, and become better servants outside of these doors, and become better servers outside of these doors. Because the world needs us. The world needs Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they are the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They need the Ummah because the entire world is the Ummah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came for everyone. Rahmatul lil alameen. So you and I, we ask Allah that we be true ummatis, so that inshallah, that as being part of this ummah, we will go out and serve His ummah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalamu alaikum.
Thank you.